give me candy, I'll give you coins, only if you want to, and only if you have too much Halloween candy. Next announcement, so today is very weird. I don't know who it's going to be, but in about 29 minutes, somebody is going to come and basically just take over for me for just like 20 minutes. Usually for Hogwarts Academy, there's not that much setup that has to happen, but you see that the whole cart full of stuff. Today's Hogwarts Academy meeting specifically it's very involved. And normally there's one of the other Hogwarts Academy teachers who doesn't have a 6th period who can go set it up for me. But that's not the case this year. So I have coordinated, Mr. Helwig said he's gonna find somebody to come in and kind of take over class just for the last 20 minutes so that I can go get all of that set up so that it's ready for the end of the day. So we'll treat it as like a half sub day, sort of. But I told them, they're the best 6th period in the history of the world. They'll be so ridiculously good for them, for you, you'll be shocked. So I will give everybody automatic candy. And keep in mind, I do have a lot of donated candy, so it means it's good candy. And I will give everybody extra coins. I specifically didn't give a lot of coins in my other classes so I can save them just for you guys. So will you do your normal stuff? It'd be really, really awesome for whoever it is that shows up. Yes?
Yeah.
Okay. So let's talk about simile and metaphor really quick. Some of you might have talked about these before, but this is me being 100% honest, and Liam screen facing me. In the grand scheme of all of the creative writing tricks that if you were in my 6th grade creative writing class, plus all the ones I've been teaching you in 7th and 8th grade, out of all of the tricks, the ones that I think matter the very most, that very instantly make you a better creative writer, is sensory details, and then simile and metaphor. Those are the top 3 tricks. And so even if you've talked about them before, I think still like putting a creative writing twist on them makes a difference. So similes, think about it at its basic level. A simile is just making a comparison, right? As a creative writer, we do that all the time. I'm going to make a comparison to something else. It's a way of talking about one thing by actually talking about something else. And what makes it a simile specifically is this formula. Blank as blank, or blank like blank. If it has the word as or like in the middle of the comparison, automatically you know it's a simile and not a metaphor. So like, we're like 2 peas in a pod. The things being compared are what? Humans and 2 peas in a pod, exactly, yeah. And it has the word like in the middle. That means it's a simile. Same with good, but it's not just good, right? Because that's not creative. But all of a sudden you can make a description instantly more creative because you did a simile. It's good as gold. And because the word as was in the middle, it's a simile, right? And immediately you're more creative. So, like I said, it's a way to really quickly take your writing to the next level. The other cool thing that it does, it basically forces the reader to imagine whatever it is you want them to imagine. So let's do an experiment on this, okay? If I said, that's pretty weird, would you think that that's kind of hard to imagine? Because what does that actually mean, right? What do you think? Is that hard to imagine if I just said it's weird?
Yeah.
What do I mean by that? But if I said, it's as weird as a purple elephant with pink polka dots, did some of you get a picture of that in your brain a little bit? Mm-hmm. Boom! That's exactly what I mean. That's how similes and metaphors really put a picture and in your reader's mind and helps them imagine something. And instantly, the comparison makes it more interesting. So, you really can't talk about similes without also talking about metaphors. So it's really simple. Metaphors, again, they're just comparisons. But the way that you know it's a metaphor and not a simile is it does not have the word like or as in the middle. So for example, you are the apple of my eye. That's a way of saying I really like you, basically. Or, you snake. Does it have the word like or as in the middle? No, so it's a metaphor. But I'm making a comparison. It's music to my ears. This one confused all the sixlets. What does that one mean? What do you think? If I responded to something somebody said, and I said, oh my gosh, that's music to my ears. What do you think?
It's like, you love that.
Yeah, it's a way of just saying, that's so great, or I really love that, yeah. This is another one that confuses some people sometimes. This is also an idiom, which is just a common phrase. We gotta talk about the elephant in the room. Anybody know what that metaphor means? Because We don't literally mean metaphor, because again, metaphors, it's a way of talking about one thing by actually talking about something else. So that's why it's creative. But what does that mean? We gotta talk about the elephant in the room. What do you think, Abner?
I like the odd one out.
Almost. Really, really close. What else?
It's kind
Oh,
of
yeah.
Oh,
No, you're good. Yeah.
it's kind of like the awkward silence.
Exactly. So close, right? Odd one, odd thing that no one wants to talk about. Like, for example, if somebody in our class, I don't know, had gotten arrested or something, all of us would be like, oh, this is awkward. This kid is so sketchy, right? And obviously this has never happened, so this is why it's okay to use it as an example, right? But all of us would be thinking about it, and no one would probably want to say anything, and it's like there's an elephant in the room, right? It feels like there's this big hulking thing that no one's acknowledging. So here's the trick, guys. The easiest way to write a metaphor, this trick you can use for the rest of your life. If you ever have a future ELA teacher who's like, write metaphors, go, and you're like, how? Write a simile and take out the like or as. This trick works like 85% of the time. So for example, how could I change this metaphor? Because it kind of goes back and forth. I can change metaphors into similes, and I can change similes into metaphors. How could I change this metaphor into a simile? What do you think, Avery? You're like a snake. And see how I feel like that's less powerful than the metaphor? And that's why sometimes you want a metaphor instead of a simile. Okay, what about, let's go back here. How would I change this simile into a metaphor? Because you can flip back and forth. Yeah, Marley. I just take out the like. We're two peas in a pod. Yeah, we're really buddies, right? We're really close. Yeah.
You said it works most of the time?
Works most of the time. Right, and that one doesn't work, right? But like on this one, how would I change this metaphor to a simile? Anybody? Yeah, Emery?
You could say that's like music
That's
to my ears.
like
And
music
would
to
you
my ears.
call,
Yep.
would you call joined at the hip more of a metaphor or an idiom?
So it depends on how you phrase it. If I said, we're joined at the hip, that's a metaphor because there's not like or as. But I could also turn it into a simile and say, it's like we're joined at the hip, and then it becomes a simile, right? So see how easy that is to just switch back and forth between similes and metaphors? And that will also really help you for today's assignment. So the other thing that's really gonna help you for today's assignment are my videos. So I do want screen facing forward, and then I'll let you go in and fill in your U-try boxes in a little bit here. But this will not only get it stuck in your head for forever, but it really will help you with today's assignment if you pay attention. So here we go.
I remember this.
Oh, do you? You seen this before?
Yeah, we watched this video.
Oh, okay, that's good. It's a good little review. Change it into a simile. You're like the apple of my eye. Perfect. That one doesn't work. How would I change that one into a simile? It's kind of a harder one. It does work. Okay, what do you think, James?
It's like your smile lights up the room.
Exactly. It's like your smile lights up the room. Good. It doesn't work every time. Like sometimes you're hot and sometimes you're cold. That one doesn't work. You could add like on that one. How would I change that simile into a metaphor?
You are a bump.
Exactly. You just take out the like. You're a bump on a log. sign language. These last ones, it doesn't tell you if it's a simile or metaphor, so everybody look. So this is S in sign language. You basically just make a fist. So when it shows an example, we're all gonna vote if it's a simile, or if it's a metaphor, here's how you do M. So you put your thumb in between your ring finger and your pinky finger and put your fingers down, right? So your thumb is kind of in between. So that's metaphor. This is simile for S. So on these last couple examples, let's hold them up in the air. If it's S, that's simile. If it's M, it's a metaphor, okay? So S with your thumb on the outside. M, you put your thumb underneath your first three fingers. You put it in between your ring finger and your pinky finger, and then you put your fingers down, and that's M. Okay, so vote on this one. Is this a simile or a metaphor? Okay, I'm seeing lots of M's, which is correct. That's a metaphor because there's no like or as in the middle. Okay, is this a simile or metaphor? I'm seeing lots of S's. Yep, that's correct. That's a simile. Simile or metaphor? Yep, metaphor is correct because there's no like or as. Okay, what about this one? Yep, simile is correct. Okay, you're good. You can take a break.
Perfectly clear. Don't you know that the music to my ear?
That's not a metaphor.
You get it? Similes and metaphors are similar, nothing more
Another simile. Here's another metaphor. Metaphor. Simile. Metaphor, simile. Okay, now we're gonna just take it to the next level a little bit because for real, honestly, it's very easy to identify similes and metaphors, but to truly write, especially metaphors can get really intense really fast. So I have a little bit more examples for metaphors specifically. So this little 30-second scene from Mulan, this whole thing is a metaphor.
My. What beautiful blossoms we have this year. But look, this one's late.
Now remember, metaphors are a way of talking about one thing while actually talking about something else. So be thinking, what is he really talking about here?
But when it blooms, it will be the most beautiful of all.
So he's not actually talking about flowers, even though it makes it seem like he is. What's he actually talking about? Mulan, exactly, okay? This one does a good job of showing you how creative. This is more like high school level metaphors, which you guys are very smart and very capable of. So try to pay attention, and then we'll be done with the lesson, okay? This one does a really good job, though. Like you could have, I read an entire novel one time. The entire novel was a metaphor. Metaphors can sometimes be really extended and really complicated.
When we talk, sometimes we say things directly. I'm going to the store. I'll be back in 5 minutes. Other times, though, we talk in a way that conjures up a small scene. It's raining cats and dogs out, we say. Or, I was waiting for the other shoe to drop. Metaphors are a way to talk about one thing by describing something else. That may seem roundabout, but it's not. Seeing and hearing and tasting are how we know anything first. The philosopher William James described the world of newborn infants as a buzzing and blooming confusion. Abstract ideas are pale things compared to those first bees and blossoms. Metaphors think with the imagination and the senses. The hot chili peppers in them explode in the mouth and the mind. They're also precise. We don't really stop to think about a raindrop the size of an actual cat or dog, but as soon as I do, I realize that I'm quite certain the dog has to be a small one, a Cocker Spaniel or a Dachshund, and not a Golden Lab or Newfoundland. I think a beagle might be about right. A metaphor isn't true or untrue in any ordinary sense. Metaphors are art, not science, but they can still feel right or wrong. A metaphor that isn't good leaves you confused. You know what it means to feel like a square wheel, but not what it's like to be tired as a whale. There's a paradox to metaphors. They almost always say things that aren't true. If you say, there's an elephant in the room, there isn't an actual one looking for the peanut dish on the table. Metaphors get under your skin by ghosting right past the logical mind. Plus, we're used to thinking in images. Every night we dream impossible things, and when we wake up, that way of thinking is still in us. We take off our dream shoes and button ourselves into our lives. Some metaphors include the words like or as, sweet as honey, strong as a tree. Those are called similes. A simile is a metaphor that admits it's making a comparison. Similes tend to make you think. Metaphors let you feel things directly. Take Shakespeare's famous metaphor, all the world's a stage. The world is like a stage, just seems thinner and more boring. Metaphors can also live in verbs. Emily Dickinson begins the poem, I saw no way, the heavens were stitched. And we know instantly what it would feel like if the sky were a fabric sewn shut. They can live in adjectives too. Still waters run deep, we say of someone quiet and thoughtful, and the deep matters as much as the stillness and the water do. One of the clearest places to find good metaphors is in poems. Take this haiku by the 18th century Japanese poet Aesop.
I actually don't really love that
Mother
example.
to
I like
son.
this other one way more, so I'm going to skip
And
to this
extent
next
ways.
one.
This poem,
This is much
Mother
better.
to Son. Well, son, I'll tell you, life for me ain't been no crystal stair. It's had tacks in it, and splinters, and boards torn up, and places with no carpet on the floor. Langston Hughes is making a metaphor that compares a hard life to a wrecked house you still have to live in. Those splinters and tacks feel real. They hurt your own feet and your own heart. But the mother is describing her life here, not her actual house. And hunger and cold, exhausting work and poverty are what's also inside those splinters. Metaphors aren't always about our human lives and feelings. The Chicago poet Carl Sandburg wrote, the fog comes on little cat feet. It sits looking over harbor and city on silent haunches, and then moves on. The comparison here is simple. Fog is being described as a cat. But a good metaphor isn't a puzzle or a way to convey hidden meanings. It's a way to let you feel and know something differently. No one who's heard this poem forgets it. You see fog, and there's a small gray cat nearby. Metaphors give words a way to go beyond their own meaning. They're handles on the door of what we can know and of what we can imagine. Each door leads to some new house and some new world that only that one handle can open. What's amazing is this. By making a handle, you can make a world.
Okay, everybody, so let's go ahead and turn computers around. You need to give me an example, you need to give me an example in the you try box for simile. So give me an example that's not already on the chart. You go stop recording. And you also need to give me an example that's not already on the chart.